was 22 years old when this happened. At the time, I worked the closing shift at a small gas station just outside my town. It sat along Route 16, surrounded by farmland and patches of thick woods. During the day, the place stayed busy with commuters and truck drivers, but after 10 o'clock, everything changed. The highway became almost empty. The gas pumps stood under bright white lights, while everything beyond them disappeared into darkness. It always felt like the station existed in its own little world, cut off from everything else. I had been working there for almost 4 months. The job itself wasn't difficult. I stocked shelves, cleaned coffee machines, rang up customers, and locked the store at midnight. I never believed in ghosts or urban legends. The only thing I was ever worried about was getting robbed. That changed on a Thursday night in late October. It had been raining since the afternoon. By 10:30, only a few customers had stopped by. An older truck driver bought coffee. A couple in an SUV grabbed snacks. After that, nothing. The parking lot became completely empty. Rain tapped against the windows while the neon open sign reflected across the wet pavement outside. I remember looking at the clock. 10:47 p.m. I sighed and grabbed a broom. As I started sweeping near the refrigerators, the store phone rang. It wasn't unusual. Sometimes customers called to ask if we sold propane or if the pumps accepted certain credit cards. Without thinking, I picked it up. Route 16 fuel. How can I help you? Silence. For almost 5 seconds, nobody answered. Then, a man's voice quietly spoke. Busy night? His voice wasn't deep or theatrical. It was calm, almost friendly. I looked around the empty store. Who's this? Another pause. I asked you a question. I laughed awkwardly. Not really. The man chuckled. I know. The line went dead. I stared at the receiver for a moment before putting it back. It felt strange, not scary, just strange. I assumed it was someone making random prank calls. 5 minutes later, the phone rang again. This time I answered with a little more caution. Hello? I like your blue jacket. Every muscle in my body tightened. I slowly looked down. I was wearing the company uniform, a blue jacket with the station's logo. Nobody could know that unless they could see me. I rushed to the front window. The parking lot was empty, no cars, no people, only rain falling under the gas station lights. I stepped outside for a few seconds. Cold wind hit my face. I looked toward the highway. Nothing. The woods behind the station swayed gently in the wind. No movement. When I came back inside, I convinced myself someone had driven past and happened to see me through the window. It was possible. It had to be. At exactly 11 o'clock, the phone rang for the 3rd time. I didn't want to answer, but curiosity got the better of me. The same voice greeted me. You went outside. I froze. I told you, blue looks good on you. I slammed the phone down. Now I was scared. Not panic, just enough fear to make my stomach feel heavy. I opened our security cameras. There were 6 of them, 2 covering the pumps, 1 facing the road, 1 inside the store, 1 behind the building, and another watching the dumpster area. I carefully switched through each camera. Nothing. Every angle looked empty. The rain blurred the cameras just enough that anything beyond the lights disappeared into blackness. I checked the back entrance. Empty. Dumpster empty. Road empty. I remember whispering to myself, "You're imagining things." Then, the automatic doors opened. A customer walked in. He looked completely normal, mid-30s, baseball cap, gray hoodie, jeans. He smiled politely. "Evening." I almost laughed from relief. He bought a bottle of water and a candy bar. As I handed him his change, he noticed my nervous expression. "You all right?" "Yeah." "Long night?" He nodded. "I know the feeling." Then he left. Watching his taillights disappear actually made me feel safer. For the next 20 minutes, everything stayed quiet. No calls, no customers, nothing. I started believing the whole thing was over. Then, my personal cell phone vibrated. Unknown number. I frowned. Nobody ever called me from unknown numbers, against my better judgment. I answered. The exact same voice whispered, "I told you not to ignore me." My heart nearly stopped. The store phone hadn't rung. Now, he somehow had my personal number. For a few seconds, I couldn't even breathe. I slowly pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at the screen. Unknown number. Before I could say anything, the man spoke again. "You should stop looking at your phone. And look outside." My body locked up. I didn't want to. Every instinct told me not to. But somehow, I looked through the front window. The pumps were still empty. The rain had become heavier, bouncing off the concrete under the bright canopy lights. No cars, no people, nothing. "I don't see anyone." The man laughed quietly. "I know. You looked anyway." Click. The call ended. I stood frozen behind the counter, trying to make sense of everything. How did he get my number? How did he know I'd looked outside? I immediately opened the employee contact list on the register computer. Only my manager and the assistant manager had access to our personal phone numbers. There was no way some random stranger should know mine. Trying to calm myself down, I called my manager. He didn't answer. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. I texted him. "Someone keeps calling the store and my personal phone. I think they're watching me." No reply. It was almost 11:20 p.m. I walked over to the coffee station just to keep myself busy. Anything felt better than standing still. As I poured myself a cup, I heard something. A single knock. Not on the front door, on the side wall, just knock. A few seconds later, another one, knock. It sounded deliberate, not loud, almost like someone wanted me to hear it, without attracting attention. I slowly walked toward the window beside the lottery machine. Nothing. The side of the building was empty. The rain made it impossible to see very far. Then, another sound. This time, from behind the store, a metallic scrape, like something dragging across the dumpster enclosure. I rushed back to the security monitor. Camera 1, empty. Camera 2, empty. Camera 3, static. The screen flickered once before returning. Camera 4, still fine. Camera 5, giant black. No image, just darkness. I frowned. That camera covered the back corner of the building. The exact place where I had heard the noise. A few seconds later, Camera 6 also went black. Now only 4 cameras were working. I grabbed the store flashlight, then immediately stopped myself. What am I doing? There was absolutely no reason to go outside. If someone really was out there, that was exactly what they wanted. I locked the front entrance early. There were still 30 minutes before closing, but I didn't care. Customers could complain tomorrow. My safety mattered more. About 10 minutes later, headlights appeared. A pickup truck rolled into the station. I had never been happier to see another person. An older man stepped out, wearing work boots and a reflective construction jacket. He walked to the locked door and looked confused. I unlocked it just enough to let him inside before locking it again. "Sorry," I said. "Having some problems tonight." He shrugged. "No worries." He grabbed coffee and a sandwich. While I rang everything up, he looked toward the front windows. "You expecting somebody?" "What makes you ask?" "You keep checking outside." I forced a smile. "Just one of those nights." He nodded. Before leaving, he hesitated. "You know, I passed a black SUV parked about a quarter mile down the road. It didn't have its lights on. I thought it was broken down." The color drained from my face. "You sure?" "Yeah, there were at least 2 people sitting inside." He thanked me and drove away. I watched his truck disappear into the rain. The parking lot became empty again. I checked the time. 11:47 p.m. Only 13 minutes left. Then, my cell phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. This time, it wasn't a call, it was a text. There was only one sentence. "You shouldn't have locked the door." I felt sick. I looked outside immediately. Nothing. Then another message appeared. Now you'll have to come out eventually." My hands started shaking. I grabbed the store phone and dialed 911 as it rang. Every light inside the store suddenly flickered once, twice. Then everything went dark. The refrigerator shut off. The humming stopped. The neon signs disappeared. For 2 terrifying seconds, the entire station was completely black. Then, the emergency lights switched on. A dim red glow filled the store. Just enough light to see, not enough to feel safe. And then, the phone connected. 911, what's your emergency?" Before I could answer, a loud bang exploded against the back door. I nearly dropped the phone. Another bang, even harder. Someone was trying to force their way inside. I backed away from the hallway leading to the storage room. The dispatcher kept asking, "Sir, are you still there?" I whispered, "Someone's trying to get in." Another violent crash shook the door. Then, everything went completely silent. Not a single sound, no footsteps, no banging, nothing. Somehow, that silence was even worse. The silence lasted for almost 30 seconds. I stayed on the phone with the 911 dispatcher, barely able to breathe. "They're sending deputies now," she said. "Stay inside. Keep every door locked. Do not go outside under any circumstances." "I won't," I whispered. I slowly backed away from the rear hallway and returned to the counter, where I could see both the front entrance and the security monitors. 2 cameras were still black. The others showed nothing except sheets of rain blowing across the parking lot. Then, my cell phone vibrated again. Another unknown number. I ignored it. It rang again. Ignored. A third time. This time, a voicemail notification appeared almost immediately. For reasons I still don't understand, I played it. At first there was only static, then I heard my own voice. "I won't..." It was the exact sentence I had just spoken to the dispatcher. My blood ran cold. Somehow, the caller had heard my conversation. The only explanation I could think of was that he was close enough to hear me through the building. I crouched behind the counter and turned off the lights over the register, hoping it would make it harder for anyone outside to see me. Seconds felt like minutes. Then I heard something from the front, not knocking. The sound of a shopping basket sliding across the concrete outside. Slowly, scraping closer to the glass. I forced myself to peek over the counter. A red plastic shopping basket sat directly in front of the entrance. It hadn't been there before. Inside the basket was a single blue jacket, my blue company jacket, the one I had taken off almost an hour earlier because it was getting warm. I knew exactly where I'd left it, on the chair in the employee break room. Someone had been inside the building. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it. I looked toward the hallway. The break room door was slightly open. I was certain I'd closed it earlier. I suddenly realized something that made me feel sick. When the power went out, I had been watching the back door, not the hallway. If someone had entered through another employee entrance during those few seconds of darkness, I never would have seen them. A loud engine suddenly echoed outside. Red and blue lights flashed through the rain. A sheriff's SUV pulled into the parking lot. Relief washed over me. 2 deputies stepped out with flashlights drawn. I unlocked the front door only after they identified themselves. Within minutes, they searched the entire station. The storage room, the bathrooms, the roof access, the break room. Nothing. Whoever had been there was already gone. One deputy walked back from the rear entrance carrying something in a plastic evidence bag. It was my jacket, folded neatly. Inside one pocket, they found a folded piece of paper. No fingerprints. Just one sentence written in black marker. "You looked exactly where I wanted you to." The officers searched the woods behind the station for over an hour. They found footprints leading away from the building. Eventually, the prints disappeared near the highway. No suspects, no vehicle, Nothing. The detectives later reviewed every second of the surveillance footage. That's when they found something I had completely missed. At 11:31 p.m., while I was distracted talking on my cell phone near the coffee machine, a man wearing dark rain gear walked along the blind side of the building. He stayed out of sight of almost every camera. For less than 6 seconds, one camera caught part of his reflection in the glass, just enough to prove someone had really been there. Then he vanished from view. The police believed he had carefully studied the station beforehand. He knew exactly where the cameras couldn't see. He knew where the employee entrance was. He even knew how to cut power to part of the building without shutting everything down completely. The investigation lasted months. Nothing ever came from it. The phone numbers that had called both the store and my cell phone were traced to prepaid burner phones, all discarded within hours. No fingerprints, no DNA, no arrests. I quit that job the following week. The station eventually installed new cameras, brighter lights, and another employee on every closing shift. About a year later, curiosity got the better of me. I drove past the station one rainy evening. Everything looked the same: the pumps, the lights, the empty road. For a moment, I convinced myself I had finally moved on. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I looked at the message. There were only 5 words. Still wearing blue these days? I slammed on the gas and never looked back. I changed my phone number the next morning. That message was sent over 3 years ago. Nothing has happened since. But every time my phone rings from an unknown number, I still wait a second before answering, because a part of me has never stopped wondering if he was really watching me that night, or if he still is.